Hello YouTube, I'm trying out a little new lighting here. Today I want to talk about my academic journey. It's kind of like a video blog here. I haven't made a video in a little bit. I traveled to New York City to do kind of like an unofficial visit over to Columbia University, and I went to their bookstore and, kind of seen some sights of the university, went through the subway and everything like that, and got to eat at a Ethiopian restaurant nearby. So this is my souvenir here, these suspenders from Columbia, little tourist souvenir for myself. But yeah, so I did that one week, and then while I was in New York, I found that my elderly grandfather, who has dementia, got COVID, and because the hospitals here in Minnesota are already quite full and overwhelmed, they sent him back to the nursing home to live out his final moments. He passed away, and I was at his funeral today. So that's why I haven't made a video the past week like I'm supposed to, so I do apologize. I hope you can understand the circumstances. We live in morbid times, and I hope that at least my videos can bring a little bit of positivity to everybody's lives. So yeah, I want to talk about my academic journey and how I became a historian of Islam, how I got to where I am, and in hopes that it may inspire some of you to take this path or learn from this path of being an academician. So I knew from a young age, like when I was a teenager in high school, that I liked learning, that I was nerdy, that I was very interested in a great many subjects. However, I went to high school in a small town. I'm originally from Minneapolis, but my mom moved us out to a small town thinking it was a better place to raise kids, so I ended up going to high school in a small town. And I never really fit in there because I was from the city, and you have a different mindset when you're from the city. But I knew from that age that I had a lot of interests, but my interests were not catered to in high school. Because it was a small town, it was a small high school that didn't have a lot of resources, and all the things that I found myself interested in, language and foreign cultures and history of the world and these different things, intellectual history, philosophy, religion and whatnot, they didn't teach at school really. I took German in high school, throughout high school, and I remember greatly liking German. I got like student of the month for German. I liked ecology. I got student of the month for ecology. I took a Holocaust studies class. I greatly enjoyed that, but for the most part it didn't cater to my interests. So I ended up really not doing all that well in high school, maybe graduating with a C average because I just found math to be atrociously boring, easy but atrociously mundane, monotonous, boring. I took accounting because it was easy, but I found it incredibly boring. I did I think 3 years of accounting in high school. I liked English class, but most of the time the literature that they were teaching I found incredibly boring. I liked history classes naturally. Looking back now, it's like duh. At the time, I didn't, you don't really know yourself that well, when you're just a teenager. So I didn't really understand that, wow, I really like this history thing a lot. I just knew I liked history class better than other classes. So like I said, I knew I wanted to do a PhD in high school. I knew I liked learning and that I wanted to go to college. And, my generation, the millennial generation, we were indoctrinated from a very young age that if you want to be successful, you have to go to college. You have to get a bachelor's degree. And it's become almost like having a high school diploma nowadays. And got a bachelor's degree is like the minimum. So I started, doing generals at a local community college. I come from a really poor background, single mother background. And, luckily I got a scholarship through a community program, and I was able to go to community college on federal grants. And so I didn't get any debt or have to pay a nickel or a dime, really. Sometimes I might have to pay for my textbooks. I had a part-time job though, and I was able to do that. So I was privileged in that regard, although I was quite poor and grew up quite poor and rough, but I was given an opportunity to at least start getting out of that. And I transferred to a university after that, and that also was mostly covered by federal grants. But after my first year of college, during my first year of college, I became president of the Multicultural Club. If you go to my other YouTube channel, Hamza the Linguist, you can see some of the stuff that I did with the Multicultural Club. I have videos about that, from back then. And I was president of the Multicultural Club, and I liked learning about different cultures and different parts of the world. I realized through studying different cultures of the world that religion has a big impact on culture, and because of that, I started, learning about all the different world religions to help me understand world history and world cultures. And I, studied all the major religions, and the last one I studied was Islam. And I ended up falling in love with it. I ended up converting to Islam. This is back in 2010. And became Muslim and started studying Islam 2010. Shortly thereafter, I moved to the Twin Cities, the Minneapolis, St. Paul. I started attending the Islamic University of Minnesota in their, undergraduate program. So I was simultaneously attending St. Cloud State University to do my undergraduate degree in linguistics. And I was also attending the Islamic University of Minnesota, which is a seminary Islamic university, kind of like a madrasa. Sorry, I had to change the actual camera that I was using. The other camera was having some technical issues there. Anyways, I was simultaneously attending the Islamic University of Minnesota and St. Cloud State University. So it was quite a lot that I was juggling between both of those, but I did them both at the same time. And it was, again, this kind of dichotomy that was going on academically for me. I was told that if I wanted to go overseas and study Islam, the best way to do that was to get a degree in linguistics, and then I could go overseas and teach English and study Arabic and Islam. And so that's why I started going to St. Cloud State University. They have one of the best programs for teaching English as a second language, which is an applied linguistics program. And so I was doing that with the Islamic University of Minnesota, where I specialized in Hanbali jurisprudence, and we also did Islamic theology. We also did like spirituality, like Madaraj as-Salikin. So it was a lot of stuff going on there. The president and main teacher at the Islamic University of Minnesota, his name is Sheikh Walid bin Idris al-Manisi. There's more faculty. You have Sheikh Jamal bin Amr. You have Sheikh Tariq, among others who teach there. And uh, Sheikh Hatem al Hajj used to be there um, in Minnesota as well. And but he moved away, unfortunately, to our loss. Yusha Evans also used to be here in Minnesota. He might still be in Minnesota. That I'm not entirely sure. Amongst others, and so I was doing my linguistics program, attending the Islamic University in Minnesota. I finished my linguistics program, alhamdulillah, in 2015. And I went on to do the master's program at the Islamic University of Minnesota. And after that, I went to, I was taking my last semester at St. Cloud State University. I was taking two different classes. They were electives because I had room to take two electives. Been doing linguistics classes so much, and I found out I had room for electives, and so I was taking Introduction to Islam, and this was the first time, at least in that I know of, but the first time maybe in a great while, that their religious studies department offered a class on Islam. And I said, I'll take that. That'll be interesting. I'll ace it. I know everything about Islam already. I mean, in a figurative way of speaking. And I also took a class in the history department on Middle East history. And I fell in love with it. And those two professors helped me think about grad school and helped me in applying to graduate school. Gave me lots of advice, tips, and things like that. And I looked up a lot of different Islamic studies programs around the United States, and at the time, the closest one, because I didn't really want to leave the Midwest. I'm a Midwestern boy. I love the Midwest. Closest one was the University of Chicago. Never heard of the University of Chicago. Wasn't too keen on Chicago, living there as a city. But I like living in the city. So I thought, what the heck, I'll apply there. And so I started preparing the application, looking at their website, getting together whatever materials I needed. I used a paper that I wrote about Imam Ghazali for my Middle East history class as my writing sample. I just kind of made it a bit more academic, kind of like updated it, added proper Chicago style citations with page numbers and things like that, because I think originally for the undergraduate class we just used APA, and I didn't cite page numbers because I didn't know that was a thing. So at the end of the application process, I realized that the University of Chicago is actually like an Ivy League school, and that it's extremely competitive to get into, and so I kind of became really sad at that point. I'm like, well, who am I? I'm just poor white trailer trash. I'm not that smart, How could I get into such a fancy school? How could I even afford the school? I think I started crying. And I eventually just kind of said, well, you know what? The application's already almost finished. Might as well just apply. What the heck? What are you going to lose at this point? You already took the GRE test. You already went through the whole process. Just apply. And I did. And it was the only school I applied to. And miraculously, I ended up getting accepted, and I don't know, entirely all the reasons why. Can only speculate. But looking back on it now, I've been studying Arabic since 2010. That might have been a factor. I, had been attending an Islamic seminary. I guess they really liked my writing sample. They thought it was is pretty well researched for undergraduate. I mean, it wasn't like original research. It was, just I was using secondary literature along with, like Ihya Ulumuddin in translation and The Alchemy of Happiness in translation. Kamiyat Sa'ada, I think, is the proper title. It's originally written in Persian, but been translated in English. And I had a letter of recommendation from Sheikh Walid. And so, letter of recommendation for my undergraduate, professors. And I somehow managed to get in. I was one of 12 people accepted into the Islamic Studies program at the University of Chicago Divinity School for the starting in I believe it was October of 2017, or maybe it was late September, like September 25th or something. We started, and so it was quite the ordeal to move to Chicago. Settle in some kind of faraway place. I mean, it's about a 7-hour drive from where I was living in Minnesota on the interstate. Took a U-Haul truck and I had my car towed behind it, and off I went. And it was tough going. They gave me a scholarship, alhamdulillah. That was the only way I could attend the university. I was very lucky to get that. And it wasn't an easy life at all. It was real zuhud, asceticism. I could just barely pay rent and have a little bit left over. I was on different kinds of government assistance, but alhamdulillah, I made it through. 2 years I slept on the floor with a thin mattress on the floor, and in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. The smallest one, but smaller than most studio apartments out here in Minnesota. We're just used to more space, I guess, and of course out here the cost of living is about half of what it was there in Chicago, literally, quite literally and factually half. In Minnesota. I was in a very spacious 2-bedroom apartment for $600 a month. In Chicago, it was a tiny. The whole apartment was like the size of like my master bedroom and my 2-bedroom apartment, and it's just this 1-bedroom apartment, and it was like $1,300 a month. So yeah, that was pretty brutal. Trying to survive and everything like that, but I did. Alhamdulillah, I got through it, and it was edifying, and I loved every moment of being in grad school, working with primary sources. Studied Arabic a lot more rigorously in grad school than it's a much more rigorous training of Arabic than you'd ever get at a madrasa, frankly. And after that, after I graduated, struggled for a while to get back on my feet, but I got back on my feet, and alhamdulillah, you see me here now. It was quite the journey. And I really kind of like the idea of combining a traditional Islamic university or traditional madrasa education with going to a Western university to study history as well. And I'm definitely not the only one. There was many other graduate students there who had come from a background like me. I was the only one in my cohort of 12 people that had that background. But there was other graduate students there, like PhD students, who they were shuyukh in their own right, and were also doing historical studies. And in my experience, the best Muslim scholars, the best ulama, are the ones who've gotten a PhD from a Western academy, as well as having done all the traditional Islamic studies. It's you'd be surprised how common that actually is. Many of the ulama at Azhar got their PhD in the West. There's many people who went to Al Medina University in Saudi Arabia, got their PhD in the West. Um, so I think for any talib al-ilm, it's a extremely beneficial thing to go and do. Um, you learn a lot of stuff about just practical ways and being able to do research and work with primary sources, and you obviously get a much clearer understanding of Islamic history as a whole, and it helps you put these texts that you studied in madrasa into context. I applied to the master's program, with the interest of mainly studying Islamic law and focusing on Hanafi fiqh. I had become Hanafi, I think, around 2015. Started studying that. Originally, I studied the Hanbali madhab, as I mentioned before, and then I switched over to the Hanafi madhab, which I've studied now much more than the Hanbali madhab, and I'm much more adept with it. I'm currently writing a contracted article on the history of the Hanafi madhab. If you've seen my videos on the history of the Hanafi madhab, I'm planning to continue to make more. Probably in January, once I'm done with that contracted article there. That's when I'm supposed to turn it in or out thereabouts for Routledge textbook company, Routledge Publishing Company. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. I've been homeless 2 times, in between all those things. But I'm not here to get any kind of sympathy or have a sob story or anything like that. It's not easy coming from a poor background to get into academia, but that's essentially what I went through, and I probably would be doing my PhD right now if it wasn't for COVID. So many, I applied before, and then COVID hit right as the kind of like results were coming back if you're going to get accepted or not. And a lot of schools just decided outright not to accept any students. And this fall here, they're just saying from the get-go, we're not taking any applications. Some applications I had already started working on. I had already gotten letters of recommendation sent over, and then they changed their mind and decided we're not going to take applications, and that was that. So it's a journey, and I hope to do my PhD, and my long-term goal is to be a professor of Islamic studies. And even if I never get the opportunity to be a professor, I still want to have my PhD. I hope to write very prolifically, whether I get a job as an academic or not, whether I get to put my PhD to use or not. And I want to continue this YouTube channel for the rest of my life, bringing you guys new research, bringing you guys different videos on different topics in history, and maybe throughout my life I can cover a lot of different topics in Islamic history and have it all readily available here on YouTube. Because when I was a graduate student, most of the stuff that we read and researched was not stuff that you could find on the internet. It wasn't something you could find out through a Google search. And I learned through graduate school that the majority of human knowledge is not yet on the internet. It still remains in books, in libraries. So don't think that that all the human information is on the internet. It just simply is not true. It's a myth. Because I'd find entire books that were written on figures and things in history that there's not even a Wikipedia page for. Or if there is, it's a stub. It's like a few sentences. So, keep that in mind. And I hope that with my YouTube videos that I can help to kind of rectify that a little bit and make the field easier for people to get into. You know, if someone's interested in Islamic history, they can watch my videos, get an idea about things, and they'll be much better off when applying to a master's program or PhD program or whatever it is. You know, I hope to make videos on various topics, as well as just maybe make some videos of bibliographies, so you can just see these are various books on a certain subject in Islamic intellectual history or political history or what have you. So my training is from the religious studies perspective, but I consider myself a historian more broadly. You know, I specialized in the history of a religion, Islam in particular, the intellectual history of Islam, you know, with predominantly religious topics, but other things as well, like Islamic literature and poetry and things like that. They also had a Middle East Studies program, a master's degree in Middle East Studies, and you know, I didn't even know that when I applied to the University of Chicago. Maybe I would have fit better in a Middle East Studies program than the Religious Studies program. But I like both approaches, and I like going back and forth between both approaches. I like, you know, the theory of religion, but I also like historiography quite a lot, as you've seen from my videos. So I try to be very interdisciplinarian, and I like philosophy quite a bit, as you've probably seen. My specialty is usul fiqh, or Islamic legal theory, or legal epistemology, or the theory behind ritual, the theory behind law, theory behind ethics, and that type of thing. Is all very, very fascinating to me, and how that connects to Islamic theology, or you know, tafsir al-Quran, Islamic exegesis, and various things like that. So that's, in summation, kind of my academic story. And if anybody ever wants advice about, you know, applying to grad school or going to an Islamic studies program or anything like that, just feel free to message me on my Patreon, and I will, you know, happily answer you and give you whatever advice. Or you can check out my Facebook page as well. Send me a message there, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And I hope to continue making videos here on Umayyad political history. I think Abdul Malik is next, Caliph Abdul Malik. And I have, you know, other videos on other topics in the works in my mind that I plan to do in the future as well. I guess that's pretty much it. I wish you guys all stay safe with COVID and everything that's going on in the world. I wish you all the best. Ma'as salama.